Okay, Bonnie, if you'll take a few minutes here to walk us through some of your pieces and
Okay.
discuss what you'd like to about whether it's the inspiration or the difficulty or just the pleasure in that piece.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, we'll just start maybe at this first one is a heron, and I call that preying, P-R-E-Y, because it is, he's hunting at the moment, and I just like that they're very fierce looking, and so I did that. But I throw the pot on the potter's wheel, and then I will do the additions of like the reeds. I make that separately and attach that to the pot, and I sculpt the heron and attach it and do the wings, and then I do an underglaze on that and a glaze and fire it. So I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I just really enjoy doing the ceramics. And I'll show you some of them. I started out with trees, and I moved to birds and herons, but my initial inspiration was trees. So if you want to take a look at this one over here, this piece right here is kind of one of my signature pieces. It's a cypress tree, and I was inspired by the trees up here on the coast when I came up here in college, and I knew that this is where I wanted to land. So I eventually got up here, and I still love the cypress trees as they're clinging to the cliffs there with the wind bent and kind of bending over, and so that's the inspiration for the trees. And they're all made the same way. I throw the pot on the potter's wheel, and then I will sculpt the tree and attach it to the body of the pot. I like the difference of the smooth wheel thrown pot and then attach the organic attached to it. And one of the next ones is the pileated woodpecker. Not like anything else that I have done. I'm always looking for different ideas of interesting birds and animals, and I like that because of the black and the white and the red, so that was kind of a fun piece to do, so I enjoyed doing that one. So if you want to move around, here's another bird of the pheasant. So the same thing, I'm always looking for interesting forms for birds and animals, and so I really like the idea of the pheasant. So I did a pheasant on that. And then one of my brand new ones is, I just finished this last week, are seahorses. And it was just something fun that I wanted to do, something totally different, and I think I am going to probably make more seahorses. But this is the first one, my trying out on what my seahorses are going to look like on what kind of pots. So that's my first one.
That's great. I like that. Okay.
Yeah. And I also have a lake otter. I live in Willits, and on our Lake Emily, we actually have otters, and I have actually seen them there in the lake, which is pretty amazing. So I wanted to sculpt an otter. And then this is one of my original pieces, my cypress trees on a covered jar. And the black on this is actually smoking. After I have done the underglaze on it, I do some masking here with some newspaper to keep this bright, and I put it in a galvanized trash can, and I set it on fire with redwood needles and newspaper, and that gives this kind of organic, dark look to it. It's similar to a raku firing, but it's just the final step on that. So I enjoy doing that. I'm not doing that so much anymore because of the fires in our area. In the summer, I don't do the smoke firing, except like I get up at 3 in the morning and set them off because I don't want to upset the neighbors. Although they know I'm doing this, but still nobody likes to see smoke nowadays. So I'm trying to get away from that. So I'm doing less of the smoke firing, unless it's the winter and it's wet, and then I can do smoke firing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the range of the type of work that I do, and I just keep trying to find new ideas and do new work. So we'll see what comes up next.
That's wonderful, Bonnie. I love that cypress tree motifs and the herons and all that. That's great, and you were very, very instructive about that. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Scott, if you'll just sort of walk us through some of your work in this exhibit, that'd be great.
Well, the name of this show is Decade because I've been coming up here for 10 years doing photography on the Mendocino coast, and that sort of led me to doing some work in the Sierra Nevadas, and I upgraded my equipment, and I've done a lot of international travel. So what you're seeing in the gallery in this show is actually 3 distinct areas of my photography. California coastal photography, mostly the Mendocino coast, High Sierra photography, Yosemite and the Eastern Sierras, and then travel. I've been to Antarctica, Argentina, all over Europe, Italy, etc. And so I've done a lot of photography in those locations, and particularly in Great Britain, where I've done a lot of work there too. So actually, this featured artist display is divided into 3 sections. So the first section is some of my international photography. This is the London Eye, which is this is the county hall in London here, and people, of course, when it's an old town like London, kind of objected to this modern Ferris wheel being put on the Thames River, but nevertheless, like many of these disparaged projects, a number of years later, it's like part of the landscape, you know, and as you can see, it's quite spectacular at night. And we were walking back from Trafalgar Square, and I saw that, and we stood up on the embankment, and I took that shot.
What year was that they built that? Do you remember?
I
Scott?
do not know when it was built.
I don't remember seeing
It may
that.
have been for the London Olympics, which I believe was in the 80s.
Yeah.
This photograph is of the North York Moors Railway, which is in the center of England. York, of course, is a large and ancient town. This particular railroad operates daily, 365 days a year. It's a tourist railroad, but it also services the communities, and there are 3 remote areas in Britain where the locals use this to go to market in a town called Whitby, which is on the English Channel, does a lot of trade with France and Europe. And so when you ride the train, it's tourists, but it also is locals going to market. And all of the steam engines, there's I believe 11 of them, are well maintained, mostly by some professionals, but mostly volunteers, retired railroad workers. And we hiked from a small town that's along the railway and up to the Claremont, which is where the railroad is based, and we walked by the yards, and this machine was just getting ready to go off. This is the actual engine that we took out to the other destination, but he was low on coal, and this is a coal tower, and he had just finished dumping a bunch of coal into his engine here. You can actually see the engineer right here. And so I set up and got this shot. It was one of those shots where cropping is really important because there's some things over here and here that are very distracting to this picture. But I was able to get it so that we have the engine and a fairly balanced photo. Incidentally, this thing does not go chug, chug, chug when it rolls like we imagine U.S. steam engines, from your westerns that you watch. It actually is very silent. And about 10 seconds after this was taken, he rolled right out of the frame.
I'll be done.
So, very popular picture. This is, of course, Eiffel Tower, which is lit up at night these days. It actually does a little bit of a light show sometimes, where the light goes up and down the tower. And a few years ago, I think it was for the Paris Olympics, they restored the searchlights that were on top, because for many years they didn't operate. So my wife and I were there, and we're on the top of the Arc de Triomphe. And I have seen lots of pictures of the Eiffel Tower, but never of this one. This is a major street. It's the that runs down to the Eiffel Tower and the Champ de Mars, which is where the tower itself is located. And I just like the city laid out behind it, and the apartments modern and also old in the foreground. And I have some pictures of the Eiffel Tower, but this one is my favorite.
Yeah, this is nice where it's off by itself instead of getting overwhelmed by all that braced steel work, you know?
Right. So yeah, and actually this has been a fairly popular photo. A lot of people who have been to Paris have purchased this photo from me. So these three kind of represents my international travel. Over here we have mostly Mendocino coast photography. This is the Point Cabrillo lighthouse. It took me days to get this shot. There were a little bit of trickery in putting this shot together, but my goal was to get a wave crashing over the rock and the light on Point Cabrillo lighthouse at the same time. Originally did it in color, but I like it much better in black and white. The rocks are a pretty sharp photo. The rocks are, the contrast between the ocean and the rocks and the gray skies, which all of us who live here are familiar with that.
I didn't realize the light still works at that
Yes,
lighthouse.
that's the original light. The Point Arena Lighthouse's light is actually in the Whale Watch, is in the Foghorn building. They took that out, I think, in the 70s, but this is actually the original light that was here. Now, the Point Arena Lighthouse is a Class 1 Fresnel lens. This is a Class 3, but it is the original lens that you see at Point Cabrillo. This is called New Year's Brew, and my wife and I, Mark Hancock, who is the director of the Point Arena Lighthouse Association, is a good friend of mine, and we were able to get reservations to stay in the this is when he first started doing this. All of these have been remodeled and are beautiful, and if you have people that are staying here and you want a real treat, especially if you want to make your own food, the lighthouse lightkeepers cabins are just really good, and they're actually pretty reasonably priced as well. But anyway, we were staying there over New Year's. This was taken on January 3rd. I don't remember what year exactly, but it was just, it poured for 3 days we were there. We spent most of our time inside. We came into town for a couple of things, but mostly we just sort of hung out. And then the third day we got this particular view, and I came around to a place where I shoot a lot of the Point Arena photography from. There's a little point that sticks out. And what I liked about this was the V in the sky pointing, sort of drawing attention to the lighthouse. And because of the cloud conditions at that day, the sea was very turquoise, and you don't see that all the time here, but it can happen if you have the right weather conditions. Obviously, if it were clear, this would be blue sea, but sometimes when you get clouds, you get this turquoise. Anyway, that is actually, you can also see what fascinates me about Point Arena anyway is that, of course, this is all sedimentary rock that has been dragged off the sea bottoms and then essentially plastered against the California coast. And you really can see that here. You can see the layers of the sedimentary rock. This photo is again of Point Cabrillo Lighthouse. As you can see, there's a little bit of theme here. I seem to be attracted to lighthouses, and actually I hope later this month to go up to shoot a couple of lighthouses up in the Redwood Coast. Trinidad has a real nice old lighthouse up there that I'm hoping to get. I got up at 3 in the morning in a driving rainstorm and drove up from Point Arena to Mendocino to shoot this. And I got there, it had just stopped raining, and it was kind of dark. But as you can see in the background, we've got the dawn light, the pink in the clouds. The sun is not yet on the lighthouse, and it had just been repainted at this point, and so it just looks beautiful.
Yeah, it stands out.
And what you're looking here is, this, by the way, is not the ocean. This is actually one of the, as you're probably aware, a lot of places along the coast, the rock is such that it can be undermined, and there are these holes, essentially. And this is one of the holes that is in the peninsula right next to the lighthouse.
Yeah.
But this one's called Dawn Patrol because I got up at dawn. This one here is called Twilight Afterburner. This is absolutely a completely planned shot. One of the few. Normally I go and look for stuff and set up my tripod and shoot. But in this case, I planned this one. I knew the sun was going to set there. I have a table which shows me when that happens. And I knew that the angle, I really wanted the sun a little bit further over this way, but I was going to have to be there at a different season of year. And when I lined it all up, I was okay with the balance on both sides of the photo. So I went to Stoneboro Beach, which is, if you're local here, you know that's
where I live.
yeah. It's just up the coast here a bit. And you have to walk about a quarter mile, maybe a half a mile over sand dunes, and it boy, you feel it when you get over there. So I got over to the beach, and somebody had conveniently created a driftwood fort, right? And it actually gave me a little wind protection. So I set up my tripod, about 3 feet off the ground, and then I just waited. And sure enough, the sun came around and.
Marvelous, yeah.
And a lot of people do call the Mendocino Coast the Sunset Coast, and it really is. I mean, it's almost like, you get up every day, okay, what's going to happen today? Another great sunset. So, but anyway, I didn't know how this was going to come out. Wasn't sure about how the exposure was going to work. I experimented a lot with the foreground here. This is just the beach there, and I did do a little work to sort of bring out, overexpose the peninsula, so you had a little bit more of, Ansel Adams said that about 25% of photography is taking the shot, and the 75% remaining is the work you do in post-processing, how you crop it, how you develop it in the old days, how I decide to present it, what parts of the photo I want to emphasize. We can do dodge and burning with a as the old timers could, but we have computer tools to do that. Anybody who thinks that somebody like Easton or Adams just took and printed their work and then published it is delusional, because they all used their enlargement machines and dodging and burning techniques and masking to get the vision they wanted. And Ansel actually argued for many years that photography was as much as an art as painting. This was one of the first photos that I took here. This is from a little hill that's right above the Garcia River. And I just got some clouds that day. That probably the only place you ever see them is here on the Mendocino coast. I mean, just look at this. I mean, sort of a cumulus piece here, and then the cirrus clouds with the horsetails. And this, of course, is the Garcia River, and that's why it's called the Garcia. I called it Message to the Garcia. My original title was Garcia River Runs to the Sea. But you can see, there's a little bit of there was some cattle fencing in here that was in the foreground. And the lighthouse, of course, is right here. I just wanted a kind of a panorama of the area, and you can also see, which most people are not aware of, the cliffs on the Point Arena are not just restricted to the seaside; they go all the way around. This photo, which is called Beacon on Blue, is actually part of a much larger photo, and which I call aerodynamic. And but I was looking at this one day, looking at the other photo one day, and what I decided was to see if I could clip a piece of that larger photo out and then blow it up, because I loved the clouds that were in this and the color of the water, and especially like the wave in the foreground. And so it is at about the maximum, it's right at the edge of being as enlarged as far as I can do it without it making it look really, really pixelated. But it's been very successful, and I've recently had a run out at Point Arena Lighthouse, and I've sold 5 or 6 of these. So, it's not, I pride myself on my eye and looking at the ground, but sometimes your eye needs to be directed at the photos you already have to see if you can make something else out of them. So these are my local Mendocino coast photography, and then these 3 are from some of my Sierra Nevada collection. So this is actually the oldest fine art photo in my catalog. I had upgraded my camera equipment, and I did this again when I started doing this professionally. I upgraded my camera equipment, but this is a bristlecone pine. This tree is about 4,000 years old. And if you have never been to the bristlecone pine forest, which is in the White Mountains around Lone Pine and Big Pine, I highly recommend it. You don't even have to. It's 10,000 feet. The altitude is a problem, but the trail itself is actually could be done without having to be in really superior shape. It's not too bad, and it's a 4-mile trail, and it goes through about 50 of these trees.
50, yeah.
And the only place in the world they grow is here. They're here in California. There's a bunch of them in Nevada, and that's pretty much it. And they, like I said, they are the oldest living things on Earth.
Are there leaves that actually grow on there?
Well, you can see that it's a conifer, and so you can see that certain parts of the tree, and there's a big there's an interpretive center there, and the way the tree is able to live so long is it just shuts off certain parts of itself and grows other parts of itself. So these parts of the tree are probably dead, but this is the live part of the tree here. And because of the way they grow, they all look like they're these grizzled trees.
Veterans.
This, of course, is Half Dome in Yosemite Valley, which is an iconic. I grew up going to Yosemite as a kid every summer with my family, and after I graduated from college, I found that 2 of my best friends live about 20 miles from the entrance to Yosemite. So I've probably been to Yosemite Valley probably 30 or 40 times over the last 30, 40 years. And so June and I were up on top of Glacier Point, and we were looking south out over the Sierras, and we observed right there at Glacier Point, but you can't see it from Glacier Point. You have to go around to the valley itself. There's a large fall called Illilouette Fall. And from Glacier Point, you can look down and you can see where the water goes over the edge. So we were standing there looking at that, and up the canyon that the Illilouette Creek goes through, these clouds were coming down. I'd never seen this before. You know, these big clouds, and the wind was probably blowing 25 miles an hour. And so I said, "Oh my God, I wonder what it looks like over by Half Dome." So it's about a half a mile from where we were standing to the edge of the cliff overlooking the valley. And so I did that at a dead run, and I think at the time I was probably 63 or 4 years old. And I was really huffing and puffing when I got up there. So instead of really focusing, I put my camera on full auto and I shot about 50 frames every quarter of a second, because I just didn't know where the clouds were sweeping across the front of the mountain. And this was the only one where you could see the face of Half Dome. All the rest of them had the clouds in front of, but it made for a very iconic picture, and I call this one my Ansel Adams moment, because this is definitely something that he would have shot. Actually, Ansel, who arguably shot the most famous Half Dome photo, it's called Monolith. It was a revolutionary photo that he shot where it just shows the face of the Half Dome. And he actually hauled all of that heavy gear he had right up to here and shot the face. And that photo was, you can imagine what Yosemite was like in 1929, but that's when he shot it. So, and then lastly, this one, I was on a weekend where we were just going to Yosemite just for the heck of it, for something to do with my friends that live in the area. And we came through Tunnel View, which is the entrance to the valley. It's not the entrance to the national park. And this is what I saw. And so I sort of debated with myself if I wanted to shoot it, and then I thought, oh, what the heck, I'll just get out and set up and shoot it. So I took this photo, and then we drove down into the valley, and the fog was about 200 feet above the ground, down to the ground. You could not see anything in the valley that day. You could not see Yosemite Falls. You could not see Half Dome. You could not see or El Capitan. Essentially, we drove down in the valley, and it was so foggy we just turned around and came back. But I did get this photo. This one's called Fog Spills Over Bridalveil. And this is Bridalveil Falls, and this is, of course, El Capitan, where actually someone died yesterday. And
is that right?
Yeah, there was a climber lost his, it was a horrible story. He thought he was on an anchored rope, and what essentially happened is he started rappelling and he ran out of rope and he fell 2,500 feet to his death.
Oh my gosh.
You know, you look at that mountain, there's a couple of places called Taft Point and what, you look across at this and you look at that mountain. If you haven't seen Alex Honnold's movie about climbing El Capitan, I mean, it's scary. I don't know how those guys do it.
How old is the movie?
What's the name of the... June, what was the name of the movie, do you know? What? Oh, Free Solo.
Free Solo.
Absolutely highly recommended.
I like to look
He's
for that.
excellent. But you really get a feel for what the problems of climbing in Yosemite are about. And it's very, very dangerous. And I give them all credit. I have no interest in doing anything like that at all.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the collection that I put together for this show. And of course, I already am a member of the gallery, so I have quite a few other things on display here as well. But it's always, I think I say in the thing over there that the little piece that I put on the artist statement that I put on the wall. You know, here it is 10 years later, and instead of going and finding people who wanted to be interested in my stuff, here I am, the feature artist in the gallery, which is pretty amazing.
Well, we're glad to have you, Scott. That was a wonderful interview. I learned a lot, yeah. Thank you very much.
Of course. And Jack, just remember, I own one of your paintings, man.
Yeah, that's great. I always say I have a special my art is in special collections by the well-known people.
That's true, yes.
Okay, thank you.